Well, that's interesting.
Oh, the guys that
is
are
it the
installing
camera guys?
the video cameras.
You just see a drill bit come through the wall.
Yeah.
All right, we will bring the Public Safety Committee to order February 8th, 3:30. I would first like to start with introducing our newest council member, Angela Baldwin.
Hello. Hi there.
Welcome to Public Safety.
Hello.
All right, we will get started here. I'm here, Councilmember Fullerton and Councilmember Baldwin are here. We'll slide into reports. East Pierce Fire and Rescue, Chief Parkinson.
All right, so our report picks up on the of your packet. And just before I start on that, for new council members, while I'm not part of the city government per se, you're always welcome to reach out, want to visit. Happy to meet with you whenever. So moving through the report, so what you have in front of you has the year-end stats, so it'll capture everything for. On page 4, it shows that our total incidents 1,500. The column that's all the way to the left there is the Bonney Lake Station 111. Kind of see how it stacks up against our other couple busiest stations for the year in what we would call its first due area, which isn't just shy of 2,500. Next page, on page 5, it shows average response times. Out of all the stations, has the quickest times of all, just because of the relative ease. Opposite when you're out driving, but at least as far as roads connecting and getting through traffic. Next page, page 6, shows our trend over the last 5 years. 2021 is at 12.1. That's a bit of an anomaly. There's a large dip in 2020. As that's corrected, it's caused our trend line. Page 7 just shows the year-over-year incident change. Bonney Lake had a 14.1%, which stays right along that trend line. Page 8 breaks out by unit, so the first 2 units there, one in red and one in blue, for engine 111, medic 111, so that run out of the station here in town. You'll see that the engine company comes in second place for the unit. Next page, on page 9, just breaks out all of the calls by type, and just of note there, you'll see that it says 300-EMS. So this is just, these have NIBRs, we have NFRs, so this is national reporting, how we break out incidents. 300 being medical, so you remember I said that and around 12,500 incidents. Also just under 9,000 of those were. And the rest of the stats in here just talk about mutual aid received and given to neighboring departments, as well as some other stats. Won't get anything else on the stats report there. On another couple items, I don't have a ton this month. So as far as COVID goes, internally, the normal, our office staff is back in as normal as of last week. We went from, at our peak, having around 25 to 30 employees quarantined. Some of our workplace safety. Start to try and make some steps towards normal. Seeing somewhat the same in the community and the hospitals. The hospitals, what they see as hospitalization, deaths potentially expected. Then other item of interest is that we just submitted on Friday for a SAFER grant, so that's a federal grant, staffing for adequate fire emergency. So it was a request for 12 additional personnel. Applied for that in the past, our last report was. So it's a federal grant that covers us for 3 years. That's primarily being driven to staff station out into Holly once it gets built. That does have an impact and a trickle across effect across our whole response area because we're not sending Bonney Lake units out there, and that keeps our units. Hopefully by early summer, we'll start to hear back from that. If we get that, that's a good win because that's $5.2 million across 3 years. Knock on wood, we successful. Work back this summer. That is all I have. If there's any questions.
How are the build-outs coming?
Stations?
Yeah.
So Edgewood, we're underway. So that was the first station to break ground back in October. So it's 12 months. Station 111 just ran behind some fine work. That's the station in town here. We expect that to be out to bid in April. Doubles on the ground. After that, that's about a 16-month build. It'll be probably late 20.
Okay.
But we expect to have 2 other stations in construction beyond Station 111. So by midsummer, our station.
Oh, okay.
And the last station in the sequence won't break ground. At the end of the summer, we expect to have 4 stations.
Great.
A little painful and slow, but I guess that's just construction.
You guys have any questions for Chief Parkinson?
That was 4, but starting construction by the end of summer.
Yeah, so the bond that was passed in 2018 paid for 5 stations. So we'll have 4 of them we expect.
Thank you, sir. We'll move into the Bonney Lake Police Report with Chief Jeter.
Thank you. Not sure which page it starts on in there, so I only brought my
20.
Page 20. All right, so you'll see kind of these are not all the calls we had, just kind of a highlight of the calls. We had another busy month. We continue to get a ton of thefts and burglaries and motor vehicle thefts. They're at the View by Vintage quite a bit. So we've been working pretty hard with their management out there. They have private security that comes through on a regular basis. They are very active when they do have problem apartments evicting them. They have to sign a crime-free lease agreement when they come in there. And if they violate that, they have a 72-hour eviction process. So any arrest, they start the eviction process. They've been very good to work with. The unfortunate thing is it's a huge complex, so you have a lot of things going on there. Multiple this whole weekend. We were out there quite a bit for thefts from vehicles, catalytic converter thefts, and other things like that. So it's just that keeps us hopping at the View by Vintage along. Then on the back we have our NIVERS stats. This was the entire year, and you will see that we had some pretty huge jumps in a lot of offenses. Robbery being one of them. We went from 4 in 2020 to 11 in 21. Aggravated assaults went up from 27 to 36. Burglaries jumped from 53 to 63. Thefts jumped from 340 to 474. And then we had a 100% increase in our motor vehicle thefts from 32 to 64. Wow. Which is crazy. If you look at like from August to December, that correlates with some legislative changes there. You'll see that the numbers went up after the legislative changes there. So we've been trying to deal with that. Stolen property offenses were up slightly from 16 to 20. Vandalism was up. Destruction of property from 106 to 154. And then another byproduct of legislation, our drug offenses were down from 78 to 26.
That's not because they're not doing it.
Yeah.
It's just
Not
they
accurate
don't charge
reporting.
anymore.
Yeah.
But you will see that our arrests are up. 523. Just the officers are still out there working hard to make a difference. Our calls for service went up from 15,800 to 17,166. 6, and the cases with, or the calls with reports went from 1,635 to 1,809. That's, I have a couple FYIs, but if does anybody have any questions on the report itself or on the
report itself?
numbers?
The numbers just, I'm sure you'll go over those things in a moment. I'll see what you say first. Yeah.
Okay. We do have 2 retirements coming up at the end of February. Officer Tony Rice, he's been with us for 16 years. On the 28th, he is retiring former state patrol and state. He is has a business. He is opening up business, so he's going to. March 31st, Detective Kyle Torgerson. He will have 20 years with Bonney Lake. He will be stepping down, and he really doesn't have a plan besides golfing. What's wrong with that? And with that, we have 2 laterals that are in background from King County. I think Angela, one of them works with your husband.
Yeah, I do know who he is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're pretty lucky to have a couple of quality candidates ready to go and step in. We also, our community service officer is pretty close to completing the background. We have this psych was done last week. Detective Sergeant Hogue is finishing up the background, and then we'll have the medical physical. I talked to Debbie Mills today. We're hoping that optimistically, maybe March 15th, March 16th, we can have our other CSO on. That will be a big help, because running one down has been difficult. Lastly, I talked about the legislative changes. It looks like that they're kind of changing in the favor of accountability and justice for our victims. I hope that trend continues. Nothing has been signed yet, but there is clarification on the definition of use of force, which is huge. Clarification on the ability to use force on a lawful detention or a Terry stop. Also for involuntary treatment or any other court order. There is looking at pursuits, they're talking about changing it back to reasonable suspicion, which would be very helpful. The probable cause is a very, very high threshold. So they're talking about changing that along with other things. I mean, it's not going to be carte blanche. You can chase anything. You still have the parameters, but it does make it, hopefully, so people just don't not stop for us. We had, over the weekend, we had 3 of them that were racing and chose not to stop. We were able to catch up with 2 of them when they stopped, arrested them both for DUI, but we didn't engage in a pursuit with them, even though once we arrested them, they were intoxicated, which is one of the things that you can pursue for, but we didn't know that at the time. So looks like there could be some relief coming, and again, it might take a while to bounce back, but hopefully that'll help us get a handle on that. Gosh, I think we're up to 7 smash and grab burglaries. Out at the 214th, we had 3 over the weekend. On 410, we had 5. I think I sent an email to council about that, where we actually took home and arrested the suspect 3 hours after they did 3 of ours, and caught him in the act and couldn't book him because of COVID restrictions. So he's back out. Miraculously, I think we had 4 or 5 over the weekend, same MO, where they throw something through the front window, maybe get a handful of change, maybe get nothing. But the damage that they do, and it seems that they're picking the businesses now without alarms or a video camera. Very frustrating when they're off.
When they get kicked out or not booked, is there anything we can do with our local? Because that's going to county, right?
Yeah,
Because it was a
local
felony.
jails don't book felonies.
Okay.
Only Pierce County books felonies and burglaries.
Even if we charged them with something different just to
can't-
get them?
You can't game the system like that as much as we'd like to. Charge them with trespass. Yeah, we can't do that. It has to be kicked back. If it qualifies as a felony, we have to charge as a felony.
Okay.
And as Dina knows, the threshold, I think, is $750 for a theft.
Which is anything.
Never.
Yeah.
They don't charge unless it's probably like 5,000. But
Oh, boy.
they won't let us send it directly to municipal court to get charges. It has to be sent to them so they can say no, and then they send it back to Dina, and then we charge them.
So we have to wait for county to officially decline it. By then, they've been out depending on
Yeah.
the speed that they decline it.
Yeah, I was just thinking
That is
the arrest itself. I mean, because you were literally playing catch and release at that point.
Uh-huh.
And they know it.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
You know,
This
it's
guy did
putting
3 burglaries here, 2 in Tacoma before he got caught. Then we found out he did 1 in Milton and 2 in Gig Harbor, and he's still out on the street.
it's putting our citizens and our officers at risk. You know, running down a guy that won't get put in jail that night. That's why I was thinking. You know, yeah.
And they also know when they get arrested and show up at the jail to start coughing and say, "Oh, I've got COVID. I was exposed yesterday," because then the jail won't take it. Or they keep saying like, like they can claim all sorts of.
It's the old, it used to be, oh, we're having heart issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's COVID. They know that's quicker.
Yeah,
Because they know that we can't take them to the hospital and get them cleared. Where heart, you can take them to the hospital and have an EKG done or have Chief Parkinson's folks go now. But as soon as you say COVID, it's
frustrating and unsafe, and these numbers aren't trending in the right direction by any means.
no.
And I know you guys are out there trying to do your best, but it seems I don't want anyone getting discouraged. I know at least your arrests are up, and it doesn't seem like you guys are, but at some point,
They are.
You know.
We're trying to keep the spirits up, but it is frustrating. We had our the tow yard get broke into last week with a stolen F2 or 350. Couldn't chase him. Caught one of them running away, and he ran. And since we didn't have probable cause we knew what happened, but we didn't know who it was. So we don't have probable cause for a specific person, so we couldn't go after him. One of the neighbors sent us a video the next day that the person came back in the stolen truck and picked up a backpack from their property. So he must have dropped it after the burglary, came back and got it the next day. Yeah, they're just very, very brazen, and it's very frustrating.
yeah. I had one more, but I lost it. So, anyone else have anything else for Chief on that matter?
I do. So you were saying you have 2 retirements coming up, and then you have the 2 laterals coming in, I'm assuming, to replace the 2 of them. How many officers are allotted in the department anyway?
We have 31 that's authorized by council.
Okay.
And all are currently full?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, we're at 32 right now because we got an extra auto theft task force position, so we
Okay.
can hire ahead since it's being paid for.
Mm-hmm.
But we weren't able to hire quick enough. We'll get about 6 weeks of overlap with that. But our official sworn is, that's from chief on down. So
Okay.
it counts me, even though I'm not a street cop.
Right.
Our
Okay.
2 assistant chiefs and our detectives, everybody's.
Okay.
So we have about 25 patrol officers.
You
that-
said 25?
Yeah,
Okay.
that are actually the ones out there handling detectives. And
Okay. How many patrol deputies are on a particular shift then?
our minimum is 2.
Okay.
So, but when we're fully staffed, we usually, each squad has 3 and a sergeant.
Okay.
So we could potentially have 4, and then we overlaps with swing for an hour,
Okay.
and swing overlaps with grave during our busy times for 4 hours.
Right. Okay.
So
Yeah.
during
That's
peak
the way King
times,
County
and
does
on Thursday, everybody's supposed to work,
Oh.
but usually that's when everybody takes their time off and work minimums anyhow.
it. Okay.
But in theory, on a Thursday, we could have the entire department working. That's when we schedule training, we schedule emphasis patrols and things like that.
As far as the legislation is concerned, I mean, I know you're saying that they're trying to move towards maybe changing some of the wording and verbiage so there's a better way to hold people accountable. Is that because of, I guess, what had happened as a result of the legislation being pushed out and the crime increasing, and now they've reconsidered maybe what they did?
Correct. And the sad thing is we, being the Chiefs and Sheriffs Association, tried to tell them
Yes.
of these consequences and Block Ops, which supports the police officers,
Uh-huh.
but they didn't care.
Then I guess if there's this uptick in all these different crimes and things, and we have to wait for the legislature to, change things and do what they need to do. What could we do as a council as far as, and I guess my question is, I know we're talking about all the problems, right? And they are a big bummer. But I just wonder, what are the things that we have within our power to do?
Biggest thing for me is lobbying.
Okay.
We have a very active, both Representative Stokesbury and Robertson, Senator Fortunato.
Yes,
are
I know
very
Fortunato.
supportive
Okay.
of changing things back.
Yes.
So just letting them know that we support what they're trying to do.
Okay.
I know Representative Robertson's bill on pursuits is the one.
Okay.
So I think that's probably the best way right now is Public Safety Committee is chaired by Representative Goodman.
Okay.
And Representative Johnson. Just letting them know. I know a lot of elected officials, mayors, and council testified on behalf of a lot of these bills. So that's a great way to get involved and you can just sign in and support too.
Okay.
And I don't know if council has done that in the past, but that's a great way where you can just virtually sign in who you are, your title, and sign pro or con to something. And you don't have to testify if you don't want to, but you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if we did testify, is there options, I'm assuming online, but also in person?
Yeah, or in writing. They don't allow in person.
Okay.
So it's only online or in writing.
Got it. And then if you ask to speak online, then you have that option.
Correct. I want to say it's 1 or 2 minutes, and usually for these bigger bills,
1 minute.
not everybody is getting their minute. So, yeah.
I'm sure.
You can imagine which ones get priority.
Yes. Okay, that's really helpful. Other than
I
that,
do
is there
have-
anything
yeah.
else? Yeah.
Question. Yes. Is as council, if we're writing in on the state legislature, are we allowed to represent the city? Say, okay, I'm Bonney Lake. Modalities to, like, we need to have census of the.
Really, you're doing it as a
forward?
citizen, not as a councilman.
But it does have a place where you can say your title would be your Bonney Lake City Council. So would I just do that as Gwendolyn Fullerton, or is it okay for me to be the council member and use?
I wouldn't recommend doing that. I think there's some, Kathleen's not here, but
Kathleen and John Mahal, I was looking at John like,
Yeah.
Kathleen.
Yeah.
But,
it's something we could probably
the
answer
state-
offline too.
Let me
for
talk
you.
to her to make sure, but get with Kathleen. I'm sure this has come up before, and I was actually going to piggyback on with along with the going to the. We have the new team for ensuring that defendants therapy, like mental health and drug addiction. That's only a temporarily. A goal of it being, but and certain legislators are advocating for that. I don't think there is a bill yet for that, but at some point there is the idea, and that would be another program that would be permanently funded, because the whole point of that program is that people who actually have a clean and sober life and get the treatment they need and actually be a contributing member of society can participate in that program, and it driver's license, etc.
Would therapy be things like inpatient, outpatient? Because the things I want to make sure that I'm really clear on this is I don't support methadone clinics, needle exchanges, things like that. And so I don't know that helps drug addicts, just from my own experience. And so I'm wondering, I want to be supportive of a program that definitely allows, addicts the opportunity to.
Can we put a pin in this until open discussion, and so we can stay on
Absolutely.
agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else for Chief on his reports? Move on to item 3, which is the Marine Service discussion.
All right. Let's see. It's on page 24.
Mm-hmm.
Look at me. Anyhow, I put together a list since 2018. I started as chief in June of 18. So I thought that would give us a good look back on kind of what we've done with Marine Services. You'll see that it's funded. We get some money from the vessel registration fees for people to register a boat. We get a certain percentage of that. Unfortunately, Pierce County Sheriff decides what percentage we get of that. We don't get to say we take it or leave it. So you can see it's ranged from low of 9,418 to a high of 10,500 in 2019. Also, we've been successful in receiving federal boating funds. Received as much as 13,120 in 18 and little as 9,650 in 2020, but it's right around that grand usually. And our budget every year for Marine Services, $5,000. The other thing to know that Marine Services is typically done on an overtime basis because, again, our minimum staffing being 2 officers, we can't put them out on the boat because if they have to respond to a priority, we would have nobody that can go out and handle that.
Yeah.
So it's typically done on overtime with these monies that we have allotted. What we do on Thursdays, we'll put officers out there. That is their duty, is they're on the boat if it's a night training. Try to be smart about it when we do it. Sometimes they're out there when the weather's not the greatest, doing a lot of maintenance. So that way you don't have the boat traffic. And so I know we get some grief that I saw your boat and it was raining. Yeah, they're doing maintenance out there. You'll see what I've done is I've included how many hours that were spent. And that includes, used to do drown proofing training for all of our students, including the Derringer Elementary and Middle School. Our Marine Services team would go to every school in Bonney Lake Sumner District and Derringer and provide training for them at assemblies. We haven't been able to do that the last couple of years because of COVID. So that's why our numbers you'll see are going to be down a little bit. We also we always do boat inspections. A lot of this is required for that federal grant. We have requirements that we have to meet, and a lot of that is we have to do vessels. We have to check to make sure people have enough flotation devices for as many people, that they have their safety equipment and that sort of those. We also document warnings and write citations. In 2018, we weren't able to get the data for how many citations we wrote out of our state reporting system is Sector. For whatever reason, it did not allow us to find that. But I would venture, we typically are somewhere below 10 in the number of citations that we issue. Warnings. State has told us that they like education with some enforcement. I know the folks behind me would like to see more enforcement, and I totally understand that. It's sometimes difficult to do that, and the officers, they will gauge a person on are we going to get more compliance with a warning or with enforcement. So that's typically how we've operated. You'll see in 2020, that was another COVID year. We only had 370 total hours and no education. Our inspections were down to 47. There were 7 citations issued with 18 warnings. In 21, there were 525.5 hours, and that was up significantly because it didn't include any hours spent on education, which usually we had a pretty good amount that we would spend on education. So that was all on the water, 2021, with 48 inspections, 3 citations, and 20 warnings that were issued. And we did receive a $15,000 federal grant this year to be applied. We haven't got a vessel registration fees. We typically get that, I want to say, in the March timeframe for the Sheriff's Department. So again, I think we're probably going to be in that 9,000 to 9,500 range, unless a lot of people went out and bought boats last year and registered them. And down below, it has some things that we've done so we could reallocate. Prior to 2020, our officers that were assigned to Marine Services spent an inordinate amount of time on the beach because Allen York Park was a free-for-all. There were fights there. There were problems at the boat launch. Since we capped the amount of people that are allowed in the park. We've hired private security to assist with doing voluntary bag checks and counting the number of people there and limiting the number of people. It has turned back into a park that our families can enjoy and allowed our Marine Services officers to spend more time out on the water. That's been one of our focuses there. It's really helped out a lot. Same thing with working with Public Works to staff the boat trailer parking. So again, when that's full, we don't allow any more launches. And we were running into issues where somebody would launch a boat. They wouldn't know the boat trailer parking was full because they launch first, they go to park, they can't find a place to park. They've already paid, they've already launched. It was causing some issues. Address that. From about Memorial Day until Labor Day, we do our best to staff Marine Services Friday, Saturday, and Sunday during peak boating times, usually from noon till about 6 or 7 in the evening. And it's we staff it with 2 officers for safety reasons. They have 2 to operate the boat in case one falls over. So we try to staff that whenever we can, in addition to staffing another officer to help out with things going on at Allen York Park. And again, we adjust our patrols due to the weather. We've had a couple where we've been hit like in early May with 90-degree weather. Typically, we're not going to have the boat out in May. If we get a 90-degree day, you can bet we're going to have the boat out there and staff. Same thing goes if, like I said, if it's raining on a Saturday in July, probably not going to have the Marine Services team out there unless they're doing buoy patrol. Trained 4 new members in 2021. We had 3 scheduled, but we only got 1 into training in 2022. So we'll have 1 more person trained to be on Marine Services. We've had a lot who have either retired or have stepped down because they've done a lot of time, and it, believe it or not, it's not the best duty to be out there on the lake when it's that hot and that crowded, but so we do have a turnover. The people that we're hiring, though, are very interested in being a part of Marine Services, so getting them acclimated and getting them trained is important. We've, as I said, we haven't been doing a lot of the in-school, so we've transitioned the education portion from Marine Services a lot to our social media. The state puts out, they have social media platforms. I know we work with fire department on this. A lot of, safe boating posts go out there, and cold water posts, especially in the early season when the water temperature is a certain. I think last year we every Friday we would post the water temperature at the surface and 10 or 20 feet below, just to show people what the difference is. And again, we talked about scheduling Marine Services on straight times when staffing was adequate. We also allowed officers to work Marine Services prior to their shift. So if we have somebody that works swing shift, which starts at 3 o'clock, we'd allow them to come in at noon and work noon to 3 on Marine Services, so we could have somebody out there on the boat. Or if they started at 8 o'clock for our graveyard shift, we'd allow them to come in at 5 and work the evening before they worked again, trying to augment our coverage out there. Again, our budget for this year is $25,000 again. We're going to try to be out there as much as we can to make an impact and make sure it's safe for everybody. And I think everybody in this room knows we have a very small portion of the lake, but it's a very active portion with the boat launch there in Allen York Park and the area between where these folks live, between Inlet Island and Interlake Island. It's a narrow thoroughfare that gets a lot of traffic. So even though we have a small portion, it's very active. We also help out Pierce County. We keep our boat on the lake. So I think they had 3 drownings last year, and 2 of them, our folks were the first on the scene because we had our boat on the water. So we're able to respond, but we do help out the county quite a bit. And if they're out there and we're not, they help us out. But it typically is the other way around with it. So that's kind of just a 30,000-foot overview of our Marine Services program.
You guys have any questions?
That's all overtime then? Anytime someone does this unit?
It's not always, but typically it is,
Okay.
unless if we have adequate staffing, we can
Okay.
if we have on Thursdays, we can usually staff it
Okay,
with regular time.
okay,
So,
okay. Because this is normally, it's seasonal, right? You said,
Right,
you know,
May through
Yeah.
September.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those of you who, Matt, didn't think you, is it better?
Jeter.
I want to say Jeter, but like, you.
Yes.
So,
I would be retired if I was Jeter.
yeah. We had asked for this in Bonney Lake, and we actually, and we asked for this information. Criticize you first need to understand, so this is a good basis. Our concerns, lake are both, safety for, property, along the lake. Bulkheads, foot docks, and being damaged. And then amount of there was a report that said there were already too many boats on the lake, and that has just. And when the pandemic hit, this is where they came to the lake, would increase the level of the and increase our safety and increase. Those are our concerns. So we're looking for help in the enforcement and the type of enforcement. It's a great place for it. Great for the guy driving by, going 50, 60 miles per hour, being in, please, but it doesn't create. We pay, I took a look at what the average property value was. Bonney Lake, and on the lake, you're paying at least double that. So we do have an expectation that there is some kind of general revenue dollars spent in that area. When I looked at the revenue sources, here's the only revenue that's supporting the program. It was from outside sources, the federal grant and the voters registry. So that would be one of the things that we would ask council to. Are there resources related to property taxes or sales taxes as the general revenue that could help us bump up the resources that would give us a little bit more? And then the other question that we had, thank you for telling us about the voters ramp. Night city on the lake is another thing we're concerned about. So if they're checking how many people are coming onto the lake, that is there any one of the recommendations that came from Pierce County to the city was that the launch be closed at dark. Was one of the things I don't think I adopted. The county closes their part down, so nobody can get onto the lake other than private launch. City's launch.
Yes, we don't have a way to physically close it anymore. We used to have a bollard system that didn't work so well. And we did, I know, Public Works checked the parking kiosk, and this is if people are being honest and paying. We had 2 launches after 8 p.m., 1 after 9, and none after that. Earliest we had is at 5 a.m. So typically in the summer it gets dark 8:30-ish. But you had me at close the boat launch, so.
Well, a lot of the people who launch at Allen York do not park. They bring a buddy in, they drop the boat off, and then he goes and parks the truck. And so we already know that activity. You can't really do anything about that unless you're having someone there. Being able to raise that, we can see where it used to be to come up and close it would be helpful because it would get people off the lake in the hours when it's more dangerous. But we would love to be able to show you some drone shots of what takes place. We happen to be in an area where there's traffic coming from 4 areas. We're the only tip of an island in the Bonney Lake proper.
that doesn't have good 5-mile-an-hour buoys for us. The other ones have really slow, like on the south end by the coves. But our area in particular, because they're coming from two different channels and then down from the upper lake. And it's just like, we call it the mixing pool. And it's just incredible that someone hasn't been hurt. There was, as you know, just right by our area is where the little by somebody slicing right over her tow line. Lucky that the deaths have been not that related to swimming, but so that's why we're here. That's why we're monitoring, and that's why we want.
Appreciate it. Yeah. If you wouldn't mind sending the videos to us via either a YouTube link or something like that, or
We can definitely do that.
Mhm.
okay, yeah.
I've got one other thing. The voting regulations, the city adopts county's ordinances by reference. Ordinances are pretty specific. We're gonna come back with more specifics on our expectations. Deputies are off the water at 7. Boats out there going nuts at 2 a.m. There's an expectation that there's something wrong with this. I'm not happy. Yes. But we now have a lot of boats that are, I have a neighbor, he has a wake boat. He puts 2.5 tons of water full so that he can put that thing in and he's tracking like a freighter. When he puts that thing up at 45 miles an hour, it kicks an enormous wave. You see now, the water's coming in, started coming in about 4 days ago. 14 right now. But you can come and see the erosion and the undercutting of the bulkheads that have been there since. Significant, but the voting ordinances have not been updated. County has a voting commission with ordinance. Councilmember Morrill, who covers this area, put legislation through last fall that said that the county should get this thing going. But the county sheriff's department has decided that it's not at the top of their priorities. So there was supposed to be a new meeting of a reconstituted voting advisory commission last fall, which hasn't happened. So next Tuesday, we'll be over in Tacoma, addressing the county council and asking about legislation, whether they can do something with it. Because the ordinances need to be updated, reflect new reality that 20% of the boats that are out there, 30% perhaps, taking these huge wakes, so they don't really care what damage they're doing to the ship. So,
What was the name of that? Is the Boating Advisory Board or what?
Voting Advisory Commission.
Okay.
They call it the VAC.
They did interviews to the county sheriff's office, which was responsible for it, let it lapse. Hasn't been a meeting of that commission since like 2017. All the memberships expired. They requested applicants for that commission. 4 of those applicants are supposed to be residents of Lake Taps with property access. They interviewed 8 people in November to the commission by ordinance for appointment. And then there's supposed to be a meeting, but there was supposed to be a meeting completed before the end of the year. So this will be another voting season that will go without addressing issues that have come up over time.
And this is the sheriff's office, the Pierce County Sheriff's Office that
The
manages
Pierce County
that?
Sheriff's Office is the person that's supposed to implement it,
Okay.
And support it.
but it is a
Okay.
county ordinance, it is a county policy.
It was passed in November. They just kind of refreshed it and added the wakeboard piece. Wake boats were around when the people, everyone on the lake built their bulkheads and their docks. And so, and they don't have to be going fast. A wake boat does not go very fast
Yeah.
to kick that up. And he can be outside the part of the buoy that we would like to have moved out to 200 feet isn't at 200 feet. But it can go be outside the buoy and it can still throw a 4-foot wake over the top of our well, we cannot go into the water in front of our house. We cannot. And if you're standing on the stairs, it will knock you over when it comes. It's just not safe. Those are just, we could take forever, but those are just some of our concerns, and we would really like to see some of our sales tax and property tax dollars put into this program. because we feel like we do pay extra money as we live on the water. We'd like to,
Okay, well, I know Dave Morrell pretty well. I'll reach out to him as
Thank
well
you.
and just remind him to help,
thank you.
talk to the sheriffs and see if we can't get
And
that
Judy
going.
probably knows quite a bit. She's the one.
Oh, okay.
She's
We
been,
just talked to Judy, his administrative
Yeah.
assistant, last week. And we've been asking her periodically what's going on. But basically, it said nothing.
Okay,
So, the ball was in the sheriff's court. Actually, what it boils down to is they didn't like the names that got people who applied for the commission. They said, well, we gotta get some more people applying for this commission, so whatever they're doing. But, it's not moving forward.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for coming down. Thanks, Chief. We will now move on to business and action items. AB 2216, Resolution 3013, and ILA for fire cause and origin investigations. John?
Yeah, this is a proposed interlocal agreement with East Pierce Fire and Rescue. East Pierce Fire and Rescue has the authority granted to them under the revised Code of Washington and the International Fire Code for doing fire investigations. Previous to this, for the newer council members, East Pierce Fire and Rescue used to do all building permit plan review and fire inspection services. I think maybe it was last July, we broke off our partnership with them, and we jointly with Sumner hired a fire building permit plan reviewer to do those services, but he's certainly not qualified to do these fire investigation services. So this is a proposed interlocal agreement, again, with the East Pierce Fire and Rescue. They would do those investigation services for us. The chief has reviewed section 2 that's related to services provided to the district when the origin is suspected arson, and he's fine with that section. It is unbudgeted, and the cost is $9,125 a year. We certainly have ample funds within our budget to pay for that, and Fire Chief is here if you have any questions about the ILA in particular. I do know, Chief, I believe Sumner signed it a month ago, I believe.
Yeah, Sumner was last month, and Edgewood was.
I have no problem with this. I just have a question. Would you guys not normally investigate?
So, by RCW, technically investigating.
Oh, okay.
So this is actually a service that we're not actually. Some of this is this is a cost share
Okay.
for the employees.
Okay. Do you have anyone that's wanting to do fire investigation? I don't want to take anything away from
Not
you.
wanting to. We do have one of our detectives is trained,
Oh,
but
okay.
clearly the fire.
Oh, yeah,
department has-
absolutely.
They're the experts, and we.
Then with the union coming down, if we're taking away a position,
Oh,
yeah. So,
This one they would gladly
okay.
give away.
All right. You guys have any questions or comments on that? Everyone okay with that? That
Those
moves.
were excellent questions.
Everyone okay that moves on to consent agenda?
Yes.
All right.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to item number 2 of business action items, approval of the meeting minutes. I didn't have any questions or concerns. Did either of you? Obviously, Angela, you weren't here for the last public safety meeting, so I'd be concerned if you had questions on or comments. All right, well, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as done?
A motion,
Yeah.
second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thanks. We'll slide into open discussion item number 1 with Chief Jeter on Allen York Park.
Yes, on page 36 of your packet there, I think most of you know that council approved installation of a new ball field at Allen York Park, which is a wonderful thing, but it unfortunate impact is it takes away all of our boat trailer parking, which you'll see I had some photos included there. I think we had one. I had one with it was on a typical day in July, and there was like 40 plus boats parked at the current Moriarty property that's going away. And there's probably room, yeah, there it is. Okay, I just didn't have it with me.
Page 41.
Yeah, so there is that included. That shows you a typical day, or I'm sorry, a slow day at the park. There's about 40 boat trailer and vehicles in there. If we get rid of this parking, we really have no alternative place to put them. I've outlined the ball field 4 parking lot. We walked it with Public Services here a couple of weeks ago. Maybe 30 that we can get in there, but as you see one of the other photos, there's ecology blocks and turning radius issues that you have with boats and trailers. Chief Boyle figured out what the average turning radius would be, and so we would also have to restripe that whole area. Then we'd have to have somebody monitoring it to make sure that only boats, trailers parked in there. So I've kind of given a couple of options, and staff's number one recommendation would be to close the boat launch for the season. I know that's probably incredibly unpopular, but with the amount of revenues that we get, we had 1,105 launches last year at the pay station, and we sold 140 city launch passes. So you're looking at 1,245 launch. Well, I don't know how many times the city folks, because if they've gotten a pass, they can launch, a million times. And then the people that don't pay and they launch and park elsewhere so they don't have to have a pass. You're not talking about a huge increase in revenue. And what would happen here, closing it here, I've got the pros of closing. Launching the watercraft doesn't interfere with construction activity and traffic. That's one of the things we're concerned about is the dump trucks and the heavy equipment going back and forth. And if you've ever seen the boat, it's a poorly configured boat launch area. We don't have proper queue space. We don't have proper ingress or egress for the boats. Very difficult. And then you throw construction equipment on top of that. It's not a great situation. There would be no boat trailer parking issues if we closed it. The Marine Services unit could focus on the vessels on the water. Instead, we do a lot at the ramp where people are getting ready to launch to make sure that they're safe to go out on the water. So we could focus more of our attention out on the water. It also reduces a lot of the traffic issues on Bonney Lake Boulevard and West Tap with the boats and trailers. Some of the cons of this approach is definitely the users of the boat launch would not be happy campers. We would lose some revenue and from launches and permits, and it does remove an option for boaters to launch their watercraft. A couple of opportunities that we identified. We could possibly look at Church Lake Private Park to see if they would be willing to partner with the city to sell permits and allow them to launch from the private park on Church Lake Drive, the other side of the lake. They don't have a ton of parking either. And I mean, you're not talking about a lot of revenue, and then they would have to give up their gate code. I don't know how interested they would be, but that is an opportunity we identified. And if the boat launch is closed, you could move the kayak rental to the boat launch and dock area, which might be beneficial instead of having them tucked away in that corner. That might be a little bit better. The other option, the only other option, we said allow a limited number of vehicle trailer parking at Ball Field 4 at Lot 4. Some of the pros of that: allows some watercraft, limits the number of launches from Allen York Park, which we could, yes.
I was just going to point out on that, Public Works was able to do a little bit of a design mock-up of what that parking would look like in Field 4, and Jack has some drawings of that if you wanted, if you'd like us to just show what that is while you're describing that there.
Kind of pass it around if you like. Essentially, you got about 23 stalls that we could fit in with the current configuration. Second two. It's less than we thought. We basically took the Allen York plans and they actually mocked up what it would look like eventually. We put it on the plan set. 23 stalls that we could realistically kind of manage. But then also you got to keep in mind that in the summertime, this does get filled up 100%, and now you're displacing a lot of that traffic to somewhere else. So there's going to be little weighing that has to happen to that, but certainly this is what it looks like.
Is this with the modification of a larger opening for the turn radius, or is this the same opening?
This is going to be the same configuration, and,
Okay.
and this summer we actually talked about doing a chip seal out there anyway. So this would be part of the work to restripe it, but the most you can get realistically is 23 stalls in that.
And with that, you would have to have somebody at the boat launch monitoring how many people are going to, somebody else at the trailer parking, when it's full, shutting it down. You would have to have it staffed, both positions staffed, from probably about 10 in the morning till about 6 to 8 at night.
I think it's sorry, Chief, go ahead.
That's right.
I was just going to say it. I think it's worth just in the limited time we have here, just remembering that on a low volume day, there's 40 boat trailers parked in the current parking lot. So now you're providing space for 23. So you've got the delta there at 17 that we don't know where they would park. And we know
Right.
from
On a
past
low day.
on a low day.
On a low day.
And we don't know, or as we do know from previous seasons, we did have traffic or vehicles when they ran out of room, they were parking along 194th in the neighborhood, which created a whole other issue. So now you're just increasing that.
And you would be putting boat trailers. Those are our concerns. Definitely difficult to manage and selling launch passes to city residents, and we're only allowing 23 a day. How do you prioritize who gets to launch and park? And then a city resident who's paid for a launch pass doesn't get to launch their boat, I would imagine, with that either. So it's an unfortunate consequence of adding a much needed ball field, but it creates another issue that would definitely cause issues for not only the residents in the area, but also for public works and for the police department to monitor. On a busy day, on a hot day, when we're in the 90s and 100s, our officers are we pretty much assign 2 of them down there all day just to manage the traffic and the crowds, because people will park where it says boat trailer queue up only. People park there, so then we have to have them towed away. Then they get angry because they didn't read the sign that says you can't park there or you'll be towed away. Then we get people that want to park in the boat trailer parking because it's closer, and then they can't, so they get upset about that. So it's kind of created a very, very big deal for us here, and the best solution, at least for staff, would be to close the boat launch for the year. And I know that's a wildly unpopular position, maybe not for the residents, but for city council, I'm sure that you would probably hear about that. But short of this, we don't know what the options are. And I think that, was it phase 2, John and Brian, that there's identified parking that would open back up for boat trailer and for.
Well, what is shown currently on the
Wasn't
plan
it,
is,
Justin?
what's currently shown on the plan shows a parking lot which is in a sensitive area. So we wouldn't be able to even build it there. So the plan would have to be adjusted to accommodate that somewhere else.
Is there any boat launch or trailer parking up at the parking lot?
So that's a decision that can certainly be considered. There is parking that is slated to go in up there if the current Public Works Center is removed. So there is possibility. Jack and I spent a little bit of time talking about that and what could be accommodated up there. It would take an investment, though, in some building demolition, some regrading, paving, and so on.
Where the
Up at
building
the
is?
old City Hall Public Works Center.
Oh, the old Public Works Center. So that's quite a ways away too.
Yeah.
So we could also put them at the park and ride now.
Yeah.
I doubt that would be a real popular option as well.
You got the probation van.
Yeah.
And it is important to consider that this isn't a problem that's just this year.
No.
With the construction of the field, this is now something we need to figure out how to live with, because it's just going to continue.
It'd be one thing if the parking shown in the plan is there, but that's not an option anymore. So yeah, it solves the problem now, but it doesn't next year. We'll have the same parking issues.
Right. And this buys us. This gives us an option, but yeah, this is.
And I seem to recall we got a grant for building that. I don't know if there's any restrictions.
You said move the kayaks there.
Yeah.
Still launching.
Still launching boats.
So I
There
don't
you
want to
go.
look at you, Chief, but do you remember when the boat launch was built? When you were a wee little boy.
It was here in 1988. I know that.
Yeah.
5.
Leap year, baby, huh?
Yeah. I've done a lot of leaping. The other thing too is that we could possibly, if we ball field 4 for boat trailer parking, definitely push into the people that would use ball field 4 for sporting events would have to park in front of the old city hall there in the roundabout or the circular drive. And my guess is not a lot of good options. This year basically is a Band-Aid, and then we'll have to have a long-term discussion what happened. But even if you decided to do something with very limited parking there, this was a 2020 public work.
Is this something we could put on a workshop agenda 3 weeks from now?
Yeah, certainly. I just don't know about the time. I know we were trying to get.
Yeah, well, after the
FCS,
bond, after
yeah.
that one, yeah, so maybe 4 weeks, whatever one is after that. Be willing to come back and make this pitch to the council?
One shot is all you get. Yes, more than happy to.
Okay.
And John, I don't know if we need to talk about security plan or if we're gonna bring back Pierce County security.
Do we have a budget?
It's still budgeted, yeah.
Still budgeted.
I just want to make sure, and then probably a discussion for you.
Like the circles, can we get the circles back?
Yes. Yeah, you get a seat, not you get a seat.
And just so you know, that the water. Thanks a lot. They're all already started, they'll be.
Oh, wow.
So
early
it's
this
just
year.
around.
I don't know if they've even let us.
We've just been in the background because we could see it, and all of a sudden they told us March 6th, our stumps is disappearing. There's water pumping. He said, yeah, they're putting about 40,000 gallons. About 40,000. He said, on the 16th. So they are always fearful going to be back in 2050 or not. Got to deal with river flows and fish and back.
If they didn't turn it on, that would help keep
If
argument
they
to
didn't
close
turn it
it,
on.
you
It
know.
would help you, but you wouldn't get to enjoy the walk either.
And I do want to say we are not. If they're going to do a safe, fun to watch. So we are not.
All right, now with that done, we are to regular council open discussion. Councilmember Baldwin, were you wanting to continue your question on the state thing?
Yeah, I was just curious what, I guess what the program entails as far as therapeutic things. This is my
For
question.
the community court.
Yeah.
So they would meet with, the city has a contract with Summer Johnson. They
Okay.
would meet. So, first of all, in order to even be eligible for legitimately be interested and show
Right.
that they want to
Yes.
get on the street. now.
Yes.
They would meet with Summer Johnson,
Mhm.
and she would do a whole intake with them, talking
Okay.
about, the issues that they've had in their life. And then from there, they would go and get some sort of probably likely evaluation. It's going to be individualized for each person.
Okay.
So it could be going and getting a mental health evaluation and then seeing what that evaluation recommends for treatment. It could be going in a drug evaluation. We're not installing, there's no, I know Kathy's on the video thing, but I know you brought up the needle exchange. A needle exchange is, something they do when people are actually using drugs. The whole point of this program is that they are
Yeah.
not, what they are
Yeah.
going to enter into an agreement to not use drugs.
Gotcha.
I mean, obviously relapses happen and there might be
Yes.
some allowances for
Of course.
1, maybe 2 relapses,
Yeah.
but it's not supposed to be that
You're looking for change in behavior.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. That was my question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that.
Anything else for open discussion?
just said one thing. Figure my math isn't that great, but if the lake is gonna be up to recreational levels by March 16th, then we're looking at 3 weeks for the public, for the next workshop to talk about this. If people start launching, even if when are we starting construction, I guess? When is that gonna be closed off?
Yeah, so the park is going, the field at the park should be starting construction sometime within the next couple weeks. But Public Works, we typically don't open the boat launch till Memorial Day, isn't it?
Right, Memorial
So
Day.
we can keep.
Yeah, so there's
Yeah.
ecology blocks at the launch now.
Yeah, typically, Cascade gets it up to recreational level towards Memorial Day.
Yeah.
They're doing it faster this year, but there's certainly precedence that says we don't open it until Memorial Day.
The agreement with, all the maintenance companies, or like HOA, it says April 15th, but Joe Nicholson should be a record.
Fast.
Yeah, as long as we can keep it closed, then.
Handcuff yourself to an ecology block.
Wouldn't be the first time.
I heard that about you. All right. No other discussions or anything? We will adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everybody.
So when we do the workshop,
Uh-huh.
talking about this issue, is that where we then